Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? I'm having a battle with the mute button, just as I'm having a conversation with Justice Putnam, who, after I tell you what day it is, it's Friday, August 8th, 2025. Time for another show, as, you can probably hear that it's happening right now. I get word that part of our Netroots Radio friends team here down in New Orleans for Netroots Nation, which it's been a very long time since I have been down. Well, down or up to Netroots Nation. You would think it would make more sense for me to go, being that we're on like Netroots Radio. There's no formal affiliation, but you know that's where it comes from. And I was wondering, so how long has it been since there's been part of the Netroots Radio team or any of them from the Netroots Radio team at Netroots Nation? And it's always the case. How do you like that? Every year. And I mean, it makes sense. You're going to get all sorts of great sound there. We did a couple of shows from, way back when you have to look it up for me, when we were in Providence, right? And we did a couple of shows sort of from like the exhibition hall of the convention. It was very interesting. Great sound, in the background, the throb of the mob milling about, and great crowd noises made it really sound like you were, reporting from the floor of a convention, even though we didn't have, a floor per se. There wasn't voting going on. Anyway, it was all very cool. But it's been years since I've gone, and that has a lot to do with the fact that, most of the years all of the years, I guess, that Netroots Nation has been going on, well, not the last couple of years, I suppose, but all of this time, going to Netroots Nation, while it was a great thrill and great to meet everybody and just fun in general and uplifting in general, no one was making lunches for the kids going to school and getting them to the bus, sort of the primary morning caretaker thing, not really compatible with attendance, but it was also during the summer, and that was somewhat helpful, except that only meant that the lunches were being made for camp instead. So, but a couple of years we were able to make it. And then it became kind of obvious, it's actually difficult to do the show. And I felt like, we should not skip the show while you're at it. It's more important than ever to do the show. And then I realized now I'm going to this thing and I'm like locking myself in a room somewhere in order to get decent sound, because it's not always the easiest thing to do to produce it from the from inside of a crowded room like that. And then I'm like, now I'm missing it. And I'm in the room all day doing post-production and editing on it anyway. So it's actually pretty tough. We would need to have a huge staff doing all of the post-production and probably lining up interviews, and you know how it is. With me and interviews on the show, it doesn't really mix all that well, even though we get pitched all the time, although very frequently it's, PR firms doing this pitching, and I'm like, I don't know. That doesn't sound like much of a match, actually. But anyway, they're in New Orleans this year, and it's been there before, and I've never made it to one in New Orleans, so I'm missing out. And so shout out to everybody who happens to be there. Anybody listening live who happens to be there, you should, message me and let me know. And then you should run around all over Netroots Nation and tell everybody that they should be, I guess I would say you should be supporting the show via Patreon, but there's 50,000 other shows and newsletters all there right now in person that you should also be supporting. So, I think it's a stiff competition, but certainly Netroots Radio merits a contribution and a visit. Remember, everybody, netrootsradio.com will bring you to all the links you need in order to throw a couple of bucks in the kitty every once in a while to keep the Netroots Radio machinery running. And all right, so hopefully everyone's enjoying themselves down in New Orleans and figuring out how to do stuff about crazy idiots in the White House and Congress who are doing things that are destroying the country. Because, that would be a good idea. There's a lot going on. In fact, so much going on and so much chaos going on, and this is, of course, part of the Trump plan, that I missed the fact that we should have started yesterday's show under the cloud of a mass shooting. We were there under the cloud. We just didn't realize what the cloud was. Yes, a mass shooting at a military base that I just, I had seen, and I knew that it was something we needed to mention, and it was just, I don't know, there's too much other chaos to discuss. But yes, according to the, what am I looking at? Whose news is this? This is an ABC affiliate. Unarmed bystander subdues mass shooting suspect at Georgia military base. That's just a little bit of a curveball for your normal everyday American mass shooting narrative. But it happens every time. It's always, they've always been saying, we all need to have 15,000 guns on us at all times, because what if there's a mass shooting? A good guy with a gun, nothing stops. Only a good guy with a gun stops a bad guy with a gun. And every time a bad guy with a gun shows up, somebody without a gun who is a good guy stops the shooter. And if the shooter gets shot, it's usually, after the fact in a police chase, or maybe he escaped and he went home and then got stopped in a traffic stop later on and got killed by the police. That happens too. Or they've shot themselves rather than face the consequences of what they've done. Anyway, out of 5 people wounded in Wednesday's shooting, 3 were released from the hospital. That is good news. It took place on a military base in Georgia, and I think we're talking about the recently renamed for the old name fort at this point. What are we looking at here? But you remember that the forts were named initially, the whole controversy, named initially for Civil War generals, which seems dumb because they were on the other side, and then renamed because that makes sense, and then renamed, but not for the actual Civil War general, but for somebody who has the same name, so that you could stick it in the eye of everybody else and go back to the old name and still not, still pretend that you're not racist. Okay, well, whatever. I'm not really certain why that was a preoccupation for the Trump administration. I guess just because they're dumb and hidebound. And anyway, that's not, that wasn't supposed to be the focus of the story. But as we've missed the story, generally speaking here, I just thought I would acknowledge that it has happened. Was it Fort Stewart? Is that right? Okay. So, I guess there the big news, though, is a guy shows up, and I think it was one of the enlisted, a sergeant at the base. Did he belong on that base? And showed up and had a pistol with him, and it was his own gun. And we've been over this a couple of times, too. It also has the weird curveball twist in the gun narrative of, where there's never a mass shooting, it's never a mass shooting where there are people who are armed and know how to use their weapons, like at a gun store, although there are mass shootings at gun stores too. And they say things like, a military base, although generally speaking, most people aren't walking around carrying their arms in general during the day on a military base. But whatever it is, the point is that soldiers nearby said, we are trained to do something about this. I don't have a weapon, but we'll go subdue this gunman. And by the way, I got stuck on the idea of reporting him as a gunman, too, yesterday. It's weird that we have, a word like that. It's just we sort of matter-of-factly say, gunman, which sounds actually, so I guess it's supposed to sound almost, cool, I guess. But, in America, that's going to happen, I suppose. But, murderer is a word, too. And for whatever reason, we don't go to that one because they haven't been convicted yet. So I guess that's the excuse. So they got to come up with something. And he's a man and he had a gun, so he's a gunman. But, we should come up with something that makes it clear that we actually reject that action. And it's not a cool Wild West sort of thing to do. I don't know. It's very weird and pervasive in our culture. Just wanted to make mention of it and catch up and note for the record that, this happened and it shouldn't have, and it did. And there's some another narrative-defying episode in our running gun battle in this country. It's been rather ridiculous, let's say. All right. Couple of other things, though, I wanted to get to today, and today being Friday, the platform is wide open, and we can check in on any number of stories for today. I don't have all my actual source inputs open yet, all of our social media, etc. And I don't know, I can't go on this way until I'm fully prepared. A little bit of a rocky start this morning just with other business interfering and me fighting the tariffs. Tariffs on my mind because they're raising the price of something I am in the middle of helping procure. And as I mentioned yesterday, and it's occupying my time and it's getting rather annoying. But speaking of those tariffs and I guess those so-called trade deals, I wanted to let you know that The Atlantic magazine, a well-respected publication that many of you read, perhaps subscribe to, etc. And if you do, you can log in and get me this. I may have a gift link here. I'll take a look at this one. But they've clued into the fact that we kind of clued into, I feel like months ago, but or maybe even years ago if you think about it more in terms of Trump and the way he works in general. But certainly a week or two since we've been on the story of, hey, it turns out that many of these trade deals don't have any paper behind them whatsoever, and no one agrees on what the terms are, which is actually the definition of not having an agreement. So, it's a little bit weird to see everything being reported this way. And I suppose if you went around and did man on the street interviews and talked to people who say they pay some attention to the news, or even if they don't, they probably absorb it through osmosis. Have there been a number of trade deals announced lately? Oh, yeah. Except no, apparently not. So over at The Atlantic, now here's an interesting name to think about. ROGE and an accent mark on the E. Roger, maybe Karma? Roger Karma is my best guess at that. I don't think I know this name. Is there something at the bottom that'll tell me a little bit about? I'm a staff writer at The Atlantic, but okay. I mean, so we're not an outside expert necessarily who's brought in here, but a staff writer at The Atlantic. Roger Karma. Okay, hope I've got it something close to correct. So he writes under this headline about those big trade deals. If you read the fine print, and sometimes there's not even that, there's not even print. The concessions, quotes, scare quotes, concessions from America's trade partners don't add up to much. And it's illustrated here. Is this, who are we looking at here? Trump engaging in a handshake. Is this with the EU officials who he recently met with? Okay, it's unidentified in the, there's no caption. How do you like that? You're leaving me hanging, Atlantic. Here's the story, again, which I feel like we did a pretty good job alerting you to, and I think you're walking around now saying, thanks, Atlantic. I think we've been talking about this for several weeks. But now I guess officialdom is taking note of this, although I don't know how they missed it because it was in the newspaper. That's how we found out. If there's anything Donald Trump loves more than tariffs, and there are a few things, it's a deal. Or as we've said, having read this elsewhere in the past, saying the word deal. That's really what his first love is. So you can understand his excitement lately. Over the past few weeks, the president has announced tariff-related deals, and that's false, with three major trading partners, the European Union, Japan, and South Korea, that have been hailed as major victories for the United States. More than that, as Greg was pointing out yesterday, they're being hailed as major victories for Donald Trump politically, as president, as leader of the United States. He's getting things done, right? But we know that turns out not to be the case. And as this story goes on, in each case, America's partners agreed to accept 15% tariffs on their exports to the United States while lowering trade barriers on American goods and promising to invest hundreds of billions of dollars in the U.S. economy, in essence paying Trump to impose trade restrictions on them. Which I guess, if you look at it that way, yeah, I guess that's actually what happened. It's astonishing given the fact that that has happened, that Trump, and now it's astonishing. We all thought he was crazy to say that he could do this, and he didn't do it, so this is really weird. Why didn't he make Mexico pay for the wall again? I mean, if you can convince our allies and other trading partners, yes, pay Donald Trump money. And we discussed how that would happen, right? There's like apparently, to the extent that there really is going to be any investment in the United States, allegedly, Trump alleges that he's allowed to direct the investment himself personally, which only means it's being invested in Trump meme coin and he'll keep the money. Probably. But yeah, you pay me money and then I'll impose trade sanctions on you. That is kind of weird, but it seems a lot dumber and less likely than getting Mexico to pay for the wall, which seemed extremely dumb and unlikely. And in fact, it is extremely dumb and hasn't happened. So the unlikely part holds up. All right, well, I don't know how this happened, but there you go. But that must be a win for America. It's not a win for America. We lose because we all pay this money. But it's a win, PR win for Trump because newspapers are going to say it is. All right. So that is weird. Okay. In essence, paying Trump to impose trade sanctions on them. That's true. Restrictions. They use the word restrictions, not sanctions. Europe caves to Trump on tariffs, reads a representative New York Times headline. This is your fault, New York Times. In the days following the European Union deal announcement, the White House released a fact sheet. Well, it was a sheet anyway, quoting all the positive coverage. On Thursday, Jameson Greer, Trump's top trade official, published a New York Times op-ed boasting that with the completion of these deals, and there's not deals and they're certainly not complete, the administration had successfully, quote, remade the global order. Wow. But upon closer inspection, Trump's trade deals aren't nearly as impressive as they sound. In fact, they aren't really trade deals in the traditional sense, and they might not benefit the U.S. at all. Oh, no. Can't believe it. Trump did prove the doubters wrong in one important way. Let's see. Oh, is this well, remember, you have to praise Trump. You got to both sides it, I suppose. When the president originally announced his, quote, Liberation Day tariffs, which never ended up going into effect, as I recall, other countries threatened to respond in kind, leading many economists and journalists, myself included, to conclude that the tariffs would lead to a spiral of retaliation. With a few exceptions, notably China and Canada, that didn't happen. Instead, Trump has gotten key trading partners to back down. But simply avoiding retribution was never the goal of tariffs. The whole point of Trump's deal-making strategy was supposedly to get foreign countries to lower their existing trade barriers, the classic purpose of a trade agreement. In his Liberation Day announcement, Trump complained at length about what he considered to be the excessive restrictions that other countries had imposed on American goods, including not only tariffs, but also currency manipulation, value-added taxes, and subsidies to domestic firms, and vowed not to back down on tariffs until those countries lowered them. The announcement of the new deals purport to have delivered on this promise, giving Americans, quote, unprecedented levels of market access to Europe, breaking open long-closed markets in Japan, and making South Korea, again another quote, completely open to trade with the United States. But the details of the deals, which remain sparse, tell a very different story. None include agreements by trading partners to meaningfully reform their tax or regulatory codes, strengthen their currencies, or reduce the barriers that have long been major sticking points in prior trade negotiations. Instead, the announcements are full of vague statements of intent. One quote, the United States and the European Union intend to work together to address non-tariff barriers affecting trade in food and agricultural products. The emphasis being his own, he says, the intend, and references to things such as, quote, openings for a range of industrial and consumer goods, unquote. A range, what do you know? The main concrete action that the EU agreed to was to eliminate its tariffs on American industrial products. This sounds impressive unless you're aware that the average EU tariff on non-agricultural goods prior to the deal was just 1%. The main difficulty in trade negotiations with the EU has long been its barriers on agricultural products, which appear to have been untouched by these deals. South Korea and Japan, meanwhile, agreed to allow more American-made cars into their markets, which also sounds great until you realize that the main reason American companies don't sell a lot of cars to those countries is the fact that almost nobody wants to drive a truck or SUV in Tokyo or Seoul. Lower trade barriers won't change that. What about the investments? According to the announcements, South Korea, Japan, and Europe have respectively pledged to invest $350 billion, that would be South Korea, $550 billion, that's Japan, and $600 billion, Europe, in the United States. In an interview with CNBC referring to the EU investment, Trump claimed that, quote, the details are $600 billion to invest in anything I want. Anything. I can do anything I want with it. That's the quote. And I remember that one happening a couple of days ago. I don't think we called it out specifically, but we've certainly been talking about how he was likely to make these so-called investments. And he truly believed that he was personally in control of these investments. And what made I think that quote a little bit more interesting was that I think there was an exchange that led to that quote. And somebody said, well, I'm told, Mr. President, that the details of this agreement with Europe are somewhat vague. And his answer is, the details are I get $600 billion to do whatever I want with it. I mean, wow. Okay. That's the details. Well, no wonder it was hidden from view initially. It makes you wonder whether anybody would ever really have agreed to anything like that. You know what? To really totally switch topics, but makes you wonder sort of thing. Like, I guess that we're sitting here having to read a formal article in the Atlantic like, hey, maybe these trade deals aren't what Trump says they are. Like, he goes and you say something like that. You really think you got a deal that the European Union is just going to find and then cough up $600 billion and give it to you? You're the richest man in the world now. Well, I can invest it any way I want. Yeah, sure. But I mean, we know how you invest things that you think you have your right to do whatever you want with, and you keep it. So, like, right away, that should be the tip. No, that sounds impossible, or that could never have happened. And I thought of the very off-topic subject. We mentioned it yesterday that Andrew Cuomo got himself, or rather Chris Cuomo, the other dumb Cuomo, got himself fooled by an AI deepfake video of purportedly of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on the floor of the House of Representatives, saying, doing the I guess doing the Sydney Sweeney thing that nobody's actually doing, right? So they've had to fake it up and have AOC fake on the House floor complaining about the Sydney Sweeney American Eagle jeans ad. Oh, and freaking out about it, about being racist propaganda. And Cuomo, I don't know whether he aired it or complained about it, or anyway, he's on Twitter saying this is outrageous and how dare she, and look at this woke mob doing this nonsense. And it, like I said, it's in the video right up at the top. It's watermarked that says this is an AI video. It says it right at the top. But more than that, I found it, and it's not hard to find, and I played it at home after the show. And I mean, we'll say this, the language of it, up to and including, I mean, it's filled with like profanity and veiled, not even veiled, unveiled sexual references all over the place. And I mean, there's no chance in hell that you would say such things on anywhere in public, much less on the House floor. And the fact that Andrew Cuomo, or not Andrew Cuomo, but probably him too, I mistake the two dummies together. The Chris Cuomo, any Cuomo would make that mistake is like, I don't know what, I guess Chris Cuomo, to the extent that he's employed anywhere in journalism, should just be let go at this point. What's the point? Don't cry over it. He'll just start a Substack and make more money than he made before anyhow. And be on the Sunday shows to discuss it. But I mean, it's outrageous that you could even be breathing. How can you be smart enough to breathe in the morning and be fooled into thinking that that was said on the House floor? I don't know, but he's not alone, because there's an entire country and press corps that is sure that there were trade deals made that include $600 billion of quote unquote investment that Donald Trump says he can do whatever he wants with. I think unlikely. Anyway, the EU, I'll say before we take our first break, has also agreed to purchase an additional $750 billion of American oil and gas. Those are big numbers, but they might not add up to much in the real world. The EU has no authority to require European companies to invest in the U.S. or buy its products. What the Trump administration touted as commitments, in scare quotes, were mostly rough numbers based on what European companies were already planning to invest and buy. That's a great little trick. How much are you planning to invest and buy? Well, $750 billion. I announced a deal for $750 billion. Is that basically what happened here? What the Trump administration touted as commitments were mostly rough numbers based on things they already planned to invest in and buy. We can't force the company to do anything, nor will we be able to pretend that we can, but we can talk to them. We can get their intentions, and we can transmit that as a faithful indication to our partners in the U.S. Olaf Gill, a spokesperson for the European Commission, the EU's trade negotiation body, said after the deal was announced. So that's basically it. Well, what can you give me so that I can walk out of here and tell people that we have a deal? Well, I'm aware that we have $750 billion in orders already for American oil and gas. All right, fine. That they've agreed to buy $750 billion in oil and gas, and they have. It's just not as part of this deal. But I said that it is. So there you go. Put it in the newspaper. The investments from Japan and South Korea, meanwhile, might not be investments at all. Shortly after the deal with Japan was announced, the country's top trade negotiator said that he anticipated only 1 or 2% of the $550 billion fund would come in the form of direct investment. The rest would mostly be loans that would need to be repaid with interests. Wow, we lose money.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
Hey everybody, welcome back. What's this show called again? Yes, it's Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio in the middle of Netroots Nation. So we're sounding our absolute worst in the middle of the convention. Okay. Hi, everybody. And if you're listening live, please forgive us. And if you're listening via podcast, well, pass it around and let everybody know that we've been doing this for 100 million years. And we've kept you well informed such that those of you listening now to this Atlantic article about the so-called trade deals having been concluded with South Korea, Japan, and the European Union, not actually being trade deals at all, is actually old hat to you. Why are we spending time on it? I don't know why, to convince you that we did a good job staying abreast of the news and we knew what was happening. And that rather than subscribe to the Atlantic, so I suppose you could send your money our way here at, for instance, at patreon.com/KagroX. Why do you want to do that? Because you definitely want to be supporting people who hold on to their old school, early 2000s, and much earlier than that, even for me, online screen names. Because so far, the people who are wearing the respectability suits on television are, I don't know why. I don't know what they're doing here, because they know the news. I see the same news sources they do. But for a couple of weeks, they tell you the story backwards, and we tell it to you right way around. And then a couple of weeks later, they come and report, hey, guess what? It was actually the opposite of what we were saying the whole time. and some small subsection of the country, like 1,000 people, say, oh, I already knew that because I was listening to Kagro in the morning the whole time. And others, of course. Like I said, it's no magic. I'm not out there pounding the pavement doing the reporting. And we should point out that must mean that despite the fact that we're all frustrated with the press corps, someone is out there doing the reporting. Although we do, from time to time, reach our own conclusions about that reporting. The clues are there. They just can't reach the conclusions for us, either because they're prevented structurally or they just can't do that kind of thinking. I don't know. What can I tell you? Anyway, when we left off, we were reading about the fact that, for the most part, the people who Trump says, the entities, the countries and trading blocks, because that's what we're dealing with, two different kinds of entities who made these deals, they have a very different idea of what they're actually being asked to do. And the loans, or rather the investment announcements from South Korea and Japan. In South Korea and Japan, they're pretty sure they agreed to loan funds. 1 or 2% of the several $100 billion that they're talking about might come in the form of direct investment. The rest of it, simply a loan fund that we'll have to pay back with interest. So, like I said, in the end, more money flows out from the United States to them, if that's the case, than, consider that the deal is being touted as they're going to give us, in fact, they're going to give me $500 billion, $500 billion to me to do whatever I want with. And they're like, I don't know. When we shook hands and parted ways, we had told you we were going to give you $500 billion and then you were going to pay us back $600 billion because these are loans with interest. Oh, well, split the difference. There's nothing to split. It's either we're net positive $500 billion or net negative $100 billion in interest, I guess, right? I mean, holy cow. What's the how are we unable to decipher what's going on here? Well, Trump and paperwork, man. I've been telling you that on social media for several years. If you want to wreck anything related to Trump, examine the paperwork. There are mistakes in it. There is misrepresentation in it. There's fraud in it. I don't care what the paperwork is about. And that's if you can get the paperwork at all. Sometimes it just doesn't exist. So, okay, we just said that the Japanese and Korean deals would actually be in the form of loans that would need to be repaid with interest. South Korean officials have made similar statements. These numbers, this is a quote now, these numbers bear no relation to any conception of reality. Who says that? Well, it's Brad Setzer, a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations, who served as a trade advisor to the Biden administration. Everyone has figured out that Trump really likes big numbers to sell his trade deals and doesn't need much substance to do so. And I guess you probably all have seen by now, maybe, the video. I'll have to dig it up for you because I guess it's only a day old and maybe you haven't seen it. But there's video of Trump in the Oval Office doing his second favorite thing, showing charts. And I don't know. I'd love to see if there's more context to it. But the clip that's going around, I mean, it's super dumb, but it's really entirely possible that that's all there is to it. He's super dumb. And he's got a pile of charts on his desk. And he basically walks up. Like once the camera is rolling, he says, we have all new numbers and they're very good. And by the way, let's take a look at this. And here, look at this. And he sorts through some charts and he holds up a chart that you can't read anything what's on the chart. You see a line on the chart. It's a line graph. And it's going up, I guess. I don't know. And he's like, all new numbers. We're doing great. Look at this. This chart shows you our economy, but he doesn't say what it's a chart of. So if there's context, it's not in the video. And that makes for a funny video. He's basically standing there doing, the old, before Elon Musk got a hold of it and imposed it on government, the old Dogecoin thing with the, the head of the dog behind the Dogecoin, looking in amazement at something and pretending not to understand things. Wow, much chart, very number. Like he doesn't say what this chart is. But I'm reminded by that. We'll pick that up and roll that out for you. Yeah, where is it? Actually, here it is. All right. Well, I have just the still of it, but we'll find you the video. As soon as I find the pencil that I normally keep here in order to keep these notes about what I'm supposed to find for you. But once again, the pencil has walked away. This is a recurring theme on the show and in life in general for most of us, I think. Okay, so back to the actual news, please. Once again, this is as chaotic as being at Netroots Nation and trying to do this show. Everyone has figured out that Trump really likes big numbers to sell his trade deals and charts. Right, and doesn't need much substance to do so, and wouldn't know the substance even if he did. One of the things about that clip also is he says, take a look at this. If you look at this, you'll see that something economy, right? And that's one of my favorite things. Not everybody is in agreement with me on this thing, but I think that specific phrasing when he says, if you look at or take a look at, that's Trump's bluff phrase. And everybody's like, well, he's lying all the time, so everything's a bluff phrase. True, but I'm here mean a very specific kind of lie, which is the bluff and bluster of, this is an indication to me. I read this as an indication that Trump has wandered into territory that he doubts his ability to explain, so he won't try. And so instead he says, I'm trying to make a point here and I can't really explain it, but if you take a look at the numbers, take a look at what so-and-so says about this, if you take a look at the situation, in other words, I can't explain it to you, but if you take a look at it and you're able to explain it, then you'll see what the explanation that I couldn't articulate actually is, right? You go look it up, basically. If you Google this, then you'll find out why I think that. And that, or if you watch the segment I saw on Fox News, then you'll know why I think this. And this too, with the chart. And he makes no effort at telling us what the chart is about. Well, if you look at it, then you'll know what it is. I can't read it or say the words that are on it. So if you look at it, if you do the work of understanding this thing, then we'll be in agreement. That's what I think he does when he uses that phrase. Anyway, as part of, we were just saying, everyone's figured out Trump really likes numbers, no substance. Recent history supports this view. As part of Trump's first-term trade deal with China, chocolate cake, Beijing agreed to increase its annual purchasing of American goods by $200 billion. In the event, it didn't increase its purchasing at all. In the event? I mean, I think I've seen that phrase used that way, but you and I would probably say, well, in the end, China didn't increase its purchasing at all. And that was another of the major themes behind the problems with these so-called trade deals, is that they are toothless. And the things, particularly the parts about investments, whether they're investments or not, there's nothing, no one says anything about, well, what if they just don't make that investment? Like you announce it and they don't make it. Like there's no mechanism, no enforcement mechanism about it. Well, I'll put the tariffs back on. Maybe yes, maybe no. But I mean, the answer will have to be yes, because obviously they're never going to make these things. But you can just, I guess they've figured out that their tool in negotiating with Trump is just say, all right, whatever it takes to make Trump get off our backs and forget about us and go spend time doing Sydney Sweeney complaining. Just say we have a deal. I don't know. And then they'll be like, where's the investment? Oh, I already sent it, Okay. I don't know. That might work. It might not. But I think there's a lot of that going on. So, no teeth for these things. I think I'm also reminded of, like, I guess, what was it? The Foxconn deal? Like, didn't China say we're going to invest $1 gazillion in a giant factory making I don't know what? In the United States. And I think it might have been the things that Trump now is saying, well, we got to have people working, putting little screws into phones or something. And wasn't Foxconn going to build that? Or do I misremember that? Anyway, I do remember that they had a huge announcement, we're going to invest $1 bazillion in something. And then they were like, no, not really. If America's trading partners, we're returning to the article here, didn't agree to meaningfully lower barriers to U.S. imports, and if their promises of investment are likely vaporous, then the only real concession that Trump's tariffs have won is the right to impose tariffs, which, okay, I guess we had that. This means that the value of the deals comes down to the value of the tariffs, which of course come from our pockets. Tariffs can help domestic producers by making their foreign competitors' products more expensive, but tariffs can also hurt them, and that's what we're seeing, by raising the costs of the inputs they import to make their products. Right? Well, we've seen that in a number of examples. On the micro level, for instance, the knife maker who was bragging 3 months ago, this is going to be great because everybody's going to buy my American knife. Are we importing huge numbers of knives? Really? I mean, we do. It's a big thing for collectors. But anyway, American knives are going to be super cheap compared to foreign import knives or whatever. And then he realizes, oh my God, the steel I use is imported. The machinery I use to work the steel is imported. Holy cow, a leopard has eaten my face. And as I told you here, we're just making little signs here for local small businesses. Well, the aluminum you need for the sign, the acrylic you need for the sign, all imported and facing enormous import duties, and your prices have just gone up. Not that I'm importing French signs for less, but, everything we think of, oh, well, it's made in the USA, so we won't be paying the tariffs. You'll be paying the tariffs on everything that's used to make that thing. Oh, well. So, several studies of the tariffs imposed during Trump's first term, and there were some, which were much smaller and much more targeted, found that manufacturing employment either stayed level or actually fell as a result. The ultimate result of the current wave of tariffs is yet to be determined, but so far, since Liberation Day, we should stop using that phrase along with the alligator one, the manufacturing sector has shed tens of thousands of jobs and investment in new factories has fallen. A quarterly survey conducted by the National Association of Manufacturers in May found that the optimism among manufacturing firms had fallen to its lowest point since the height of the coronavirus pandemic. Trade uncertainty and raw material costs were cited as its top concerns. But, statistics. Get some different charts and fire the people who made this one. The new deals should at least give companies some much-needed certainty about tariff rates. What? Why even write that? I know you're going to contradict it in a second, but don't even say it. Anyway, it should at least give them some much-needed certainty about tariff rates, which will help them make investment decisions. But in other ways, like changing the tariff rates every 5 seconds, the deals actively undermine key American industries. But he means in different ways. Let's see what the different ways are. Foreign cars, which represent the single largest American import from Japan and South Korea and the third largest from the EU, will face 15% tariffs. That is far lower than the rate American car companies have to pay to import car parts, which are tariffed at 25%, and crucial car building materials like steel and aluminum, which are tariffed at 50%. As Jim Farley, the CEO of Ford, said in a recent interview, foreign competitors such as Toyota now have a $5,000 to $10,000 cost advantage over American-made vehicles. Ford projects that it will lose $2 billion in profits this year alone, boo-hoo, because of higher tariffs. General Motors forecasts losses of $4 billion to $5 billion by the end of the year. So boosting American manufacturing. The deals announced so far are only the beginning. The Trump administration is currently in the midst of negotiations with several trading partners, including China, Mexico, Switzerland, and the new enemy apparently, and Taiwan. And just yesterday, implemented a new round of tariffs on about 90 countries. The ostensible goal being to bring those nations to the bargaining table too, which he was supposed to do before August 1st, but whatever, and no one's noticing, I guess. If recent events are an indication, any future pacts will be framed as historic milestones in the quest to remake the global trade system in America's favor. The White House will issue pronouncements of eye-popping investments, drastically reduced foreign trade barriers, and major concessions to American industry. When that happens, remember to look closely at the details, even though no one will have written any of them down and will deny that you're reading it correctly. So what can I tell you? All right, there you go. Just on the record, basically a scholarly and organized recounting of the stuff we told you in our own scatterbrained way several weeks ago. I feel like it was several weeks ago, but maybe it was just a couple of days. I don't know. Time has slowed to a crawl in Trump's America. Okay, couple other items. I'm just going to have to run through a few of these things. Important one or frivolous one? We'll do important one. Then maybe during the break, I'll look up a source for the frivolous one, because it's something happening that, once again, like what? Sydney Sweeney passed you by. There's another going on, another set of goings on. I think I'd rather say goings on out there that you might, the normal American routine these days, read the news, do the, flabbergasted head shake, double take kind of thing, spit take if you're drinking coffee, and say, I can't believe I've just seen this in the news. Okay. And you could see if anybody guesses. It's like that. Well, this will be our version of the New York Times games. That seems to be enormously successful fun. Everybody sign up for our Patreon and support the show, and we'll do a game like this where I'll vaguely hint at some ridiculous thing that's in the news, but reveal it in the third segment or fourth segment. How many segments do we have? Fourth segment. And you'll see if you guess the right piece of news. I don't know. I got to work on developing that game. So here's something of interest. I happened to see posted on Blue Sky yesterday, because that's where I look for news. And it was from Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. And he wrote a letter to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, usually something that we tend to ignore. But this one I thought actually well written, not that long. I can read it on the show. And it makes some excellent points. And it has to do with the insanity of the purported complaint against Judge Boasberg, which we scratched the surface of a while ago when it first made the news. And just to refresh your memory, we're talking about the Justice Department filing a complaint against Judge Boasberg for mentioning, while speaking to other members of the federal judiciary in their administrative gathering, but making casual comments but casual but serious, certainly. I mean, but commenting, I'm afraid that we may face the administration and Department of Justice defying court orders. Some of the things we're dealing with, we order them to comply with our interpretation of the law, and they just say, forget it. And then it was sort of made infamous, I guess, by Emil Bove. We find out from whistleblowers telling people while working at the Justice Department, hey, yeah, we may lose these cases, but the thing you're going to have to do is tell the judges to go F themselves, and we'll just do what we want to do. And by the way, I'm going to go be a judge now. And it worked. And he won confirmation to the Third Circuit. And that's concerning all by itself. But Judge Boasberg was saying, hey, there's a pretty large body of evidence, and it's mounting every day, that we're going to have to learn in the federal judiciary how to deal with. What should be our approach so that we're all on the same page to dealing with it when the Justice Department and other branches of the federal government tell judges to kiss their asses and just defy their orders. And what was amazing about that is, of course, Judge Boasberg is right. That is something to worry about. I guess, if you really wanted to be dishonest and debate something, you could debate whether or not it was really happening, but you can't debate that we're really close to the edge, even if we take your word for it that it's not happening. It's not that it isn't happening, it's that it's imminent, if anything. That's the best you can argue. But I think, it's already happened several times. That's what the whistleblowers are saying. And now we know why. The whistleblowers are giving us the why, not the fact that they are. That was just discoverable by observing the known universe. But Judge Boasberg has said a thing which is a legitimate concern, and they turn it around and say, well, actually, you're the one undermining the integrity of the judiciary and the integrity of the Department of Justice by saying what we're doing. The complaint is you've said a thing that you've caught us doing, and that's bad because now people will know that we're bad. So stop saying bad things about us, and it's illegal to say so. We're going to charge you with something. But there's some nuance to how bad it really is, and Senator Whitehouse puts his finger on it. He posts on Blue Sky asking the rhetorical question, why did I send this letter to the Chief Justice? Well, it's because that's the practice. We all send strongly worded letters, right? But he says it's so he would understand the full scenario that just touched the Judicial Conference, which is the administrative body of judges that oversees the operations of the judicial branch, which the Chief Justice convenes and chairs. Let me read you the letter, and I think we can fit it in before the break, although I'll have to enlarge it to do that because I'm old now. Formal letter, United States Senate, his office, stationery, etc. And of course, I think he is is he chair of one of the subcommittees, a ranking member rather. I know he's on the Judiciary Committee. But here's what he had to say. Dear Chief Justice Roberts, and he is dear to us all, isn't he? Over the past several years, you and I have not seen eye to eye on every issue facing the Supreme Court and the Judicial Conference of the United States. And everybody's clear again. Once again, the Judicial Conference of the United States is the administrative body made up of the judges that oversees the administration of the courts internally, so that if you have concerns, for instance, about whether or not the Justice Department is getting ready to simply flip the bird to all judges, this is where you would bring this up. It's, but it's not, it's a distinct body, but basically you should understand it to be like an annual convention of the judges. I don't know how often they actually meet, but the Judicial Conference of the United States, what is that? It's made up of the judges. When they talk about judging with one another, what are the problems we're having judging things and running our federal courts? And they would then come and testify to the Judiciary Committee when it comes like funding time or policy making time, right? That's the way to understand it. Anyway, so we haven't seen eye to eye in your day job of working things through at the Supreme Court, nor the behind-the-scenes administrative work of the Judicial Conference. But I have appreciated your invitations to express my concerns directly at Judicial Conference meetings from my position on the Senate Judiciary Committee Subcommittee on Federal Courts. In those exchanges, I have always respected the conference's desire that your proceedings remain private. I hope you agree, right? So they're closed-door meetings. It's sensitive stuff. Federal judges talking about the problems of administering federal courts and what they should do about it. I always respect the privacy of it. And you would imagine that would be an unstated rule, or a stated rule, really. That clearly would want that to be private. Now, for that reason, I was shocked to see the Department of Justice violate the conference's privacy with its recent filing that purports to be, I like the framing, an ethics complaint against a conference member, Chief Judge James Boasberg. Yes, that's right. Remember, these are comments that Chief Boasberg makes in confidence to his fellow federal judges. The fact that there are charges being filed, ethics charges filed by the Department of Justice over the comments that he made to his fellow judges in confidence at a judicial conference discussion, means that the DOJ is essentially, even if they're participating directly, whatever, they're eavesdropping, they're taking notes and filing charges based on what's said in confidence between fellow judges. Hey, doesn't that bother you as a concept all by itself? He's asking the Chief Justice. Like me, Attorney General Bondi was invited to the conference's March 2025 meeting as your guest, Mr. Chief Justice. Although she did not attend, I expected that she too would respect your invitation to these administrative deliberations, including the conference's desire for privacy. Instead, the department filed what purports to be an ethics complaint, allegedly based on a leaked memorandum of the conference's internal deliberations at that meeting. In other words, it should have been off limits to them. It is hard to see how comments of a member of the judicial conference that appear solidly grounded in fact in a private administrative proceeding could give rise to ethics charges against a member of the conference. As ranking member of the court's subcommittee, I cannot help but see this as an obvious ploy by the department to use conference proceedings to, he puts this in scare quotes, create a conflict as a precursor to moving to disqualify a respected chief judge who has initiated contempt proceedings against the department. And that's what this is all about. There are contempt proceedings before Judge Boasberg at his initiation. I think I have found the Department of Justice defying court orders. I have no other tool available to me besides ignoring it than to initiate contempt proceedings. That's the tool we're given to enforce our orders. And I'm afraid that many of you are going to find that this is the case, and it's super uncomfortable and really kind of uncharted territory. What should we do about it? He asks his fellow participants at the judicial conference. And the DOJ's response to this is, well, why don't we steal the memo, violate the privacy of the judicial conference, and file ethics charges against this guy so that we can get him disqualified from judging his own contempt motion against us. If we take it away from him and give it, say, to a Trump-appointed judge, well, maybe we can convince them to dismiss it, or maybe we can convince them that we know where their kids go to school, or something like that. And then, hey, whatever happens, happens. But whatever we do, we can't allow Judge Boasberg to sit in judgment of his own motion, even though that's exactly how it works, to hold the DOJ in contempt for doing the thing that we did. How do we know we did the thing that we did? Well, one, the observable universe, and two, emails from Emil Bove saying, everybody go do this thing, while I go and become a judge, which is a little bit weird all by itself. Anyway, yeah, good point. I thought you might want some confidence in your deliberations. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. All right, I've taken the break opportunity to dig up I still have to look for the other thing too. To dig up the Aaron Rupar video of Donald Trump in the Oval Office picking up the chart, and still not sure if there's any further context to this, but it is kind of funny. Anyway, you should all see that video. And I got more work to do. I should have run to get the mystery item of the day, and I'll drop another hint to you and to me, rather than write down the actual, word that would tip everybody off to exactly what I'm talking about. I'll merely give you the hint of basketball. Does everybody know what I'm talking about now? Well, maybe you're working on guessing. I could give it all away with a different hint word, but it's a morning show. That's another hint. Okay, so now back, if you will, if I will, to what we were reading from Sheldon Whitehouse in his letter to the Chief Justice. So again, the major point here, Sheldon Whitehouse saying, hey, you've invited me to come to your judicial conference meetings in the past, and always with the warning, hey, by the way, it's kind of closed door, not off the record per se, but you shouldn't be blabbing about what we're saying behind closed doors when we talk to one another and the things we discuss with you. You can come and tell us your concerns. We'll tell you our concerns, and let's not have that show up in the press. Okay, fine. What you didn't say, though, to be fair, you never said let's not have these things show up in ethics complaints against our judges when they say them. And also, I'm not the Department of Justice. I'm me. I'm willing to abide by these rules. The Department of Justice apparently not willing to abide by any rules, as you can see by their passing around memos saying, please go tell judges to go F themselves if they try to stop us when we do things that are illegal, unconstitutional, or just feel good. Anyway, so yeah, it's hard to see how you could stand by and allow the Department of Justice to get away with violating your confidence when you invite them to this conference, when you and I both know that I'm expected to keep your confidence when I go. As Chief Administrative Officer of the Judicial Branch, Mr. Chief Justice, you should be aware of the full scenario transpiring here. Chief Judge Boasberg found probable cause to convene proceedings to investigate whether department attorneys contumaciously, I know you got to look that up occasionally, contumaciously violated his orders. That is to say, did so in a way that would put them in contempt of court. Okay? So Judge Boasberg found probable cause, that's the standard, to convene proceedings to investigate. That's all we're doing here, investigating whether department attorneys contumaciously violated his orders, the very concern that he apparently expressed as a general administrative matter to the conference, and which is now the subject of the so-called Department of Justice ethics complaint. Doing double duty there with so-called. Is it the so-called ethics complaint, or is it the Department of Justice that is so-called here? It's both, but good placement. Very subtle. I like that. But yeah. And I mean, again, just to point out what has happened here, it sounded very convoluted. Judge Boasberg found probable cause to convene proceedings to investigate whether the DOJ did this. That's how careful Boasberg is being here. Now, he's being accused of recklessness and by the way, treason apparently as well in so doing. But recognize what he's doing here. I've issued an order. They've not complied with this order. The things I said should happen did not happen. It's on its face. There's defiance here. The question is it contempt of court? So what I'm doing is, first, I have a hearing to decide whether or not I think there's probable cause to begin an investigation into whether or not what has happened here is really contempt. I mean, talk about baby steps here. It's important stuff, but can I just start the investigation? I ordered XYZ to happen. They were supposed to do A, B, and C in pursuit of my goal, my order that XYZ happened. They didn't do it. Arguably contempt. I want to investigate whether or not I'm on solid ground for saying, yes, this is contempt. Okay, fine. But before you begin the investigation, you need to establish whether or not there's probable cause for such an investigation, as opposed to, I just see it with my own two eyes. They're not doing this thing. And here's a memo saying, please go to the court and tell them to F themselves. Isn't that on its face contempt? Yes, but that's not the way we do things in the judiciary. In our legal system, we take great care to nail it all down with proof. And I think it's important enough that I need to talk to my fellow federal judges about this thing and not be out here on a limb. So I discussed it with them, and somehow this becomes an ethics complaint against me for following the rules about what to do when these guys in the DOJ don't follow the rules. They're not following the rules. I'm following the rules about what to do when they don't follow rules. And they're issuing ethics complaints against me? That's where we are. And that's why you get a letter like this. So he says, listen, this complaint is crazy, obviously. I attach for your awareness contemporaneous whistleblower evidence demonstrating the conduct by the department officials that predicated Chief Judge Boasberg's probable cause determination. So there's evidence out there. Why did he reach the conclusion that, yes, now I can say there's probable cause to launch an investigation? Well, here's the evidence that he used. This well-predicated contempt hearing could adduce evidence leading to department officials being held in contempt of court. So the department's motivations are obvious. Get out from underneath these proceedings, right? There is a further chapter to this saga. After Chief Boasberg's probable cause determination, 2 Trump appointees on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia, over a statement of dissent, suspended those contempt proceedings by administrative stay. As you know, an administrative stay is ordinarily a very short-term procedure to preserve the status quo pending prompt further action by the court. Again here, so the next court up in the ranks here, the appeals court above Judge Boasberg, put an administrative stay on his contempt proceedings for which he had already found probable cause and had launched it. This administrative stay, supposedly short-term, has lasted 3 months. The stay has prevented contempt proceedings from going forward regarding potentially contumacious Department of Justice conduct, at the center of which was Emil Bove. Right, and what kind of, I guess we could use the horror dramatic. Emil Bove. Very scary, evil figure. In 3 months of administrative stay, Mr. Bove's confirmation to United States Court of Appeals judgeship was sped through our Judiciary Committee. So that's interesting. They put an administrative stay on the contempt proceedings that would have implicated Emil Bove in this contempt. And they put the stay on long enough to transform Emil Bove from an evil a-hole functionary at the Department of Justice into a member of the Judicial Conference of the United States of America by virtue of sitting on now the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. That's pretty amazing. Okay, was it just coincidental? No, of course not. My concerns about this have been related to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Chief Judge Srinivasan in a letter from myself and Senator Blumenthal that is also attached. If a court of the United States was used to stall contempt proceedings in order to create a window for Senate confirmation of an individual central to those contempt proceedings, by protecting that nominee from the fact-finding attendant to those contempt proceedings, it would be a significant blow to the independence and integrity of the judicial branch. There remain a great many unanswered questions, but these concerns are real and grave. I respectfully suggest to you that they merit your attention as Chief Administrative Officer of the judicial branch. And then, what can you do? You got to sign off. I look forward to continuing our exchange of views privately and respectfully at future judicial conference meetings. I plan to continue to honor the conference's desire that such discussions not be shared publicly. However, please let me know if the conference's position on privacy has changed in light of the department's recent actions based on judicial conference proceedings. Sincerely, Sheldon Whitehouse, Ranking Member, Senate Judiciary Committee, Subcommittee on Federal Courts, Oversight, and Agency Action and Federal Rights. The full name of the subcommittee. Okay, very formal. And nice signature appended at the end there. I mean, that's a pretty basic question, right? If you're supposed to keep all the goings-on at the judicial conference proceedings in confidence, what is the Department of Justice, supposedly your partner, in many ways in all of this, in the administration of the justice system in America, what are they doing? A, violating the confidence of the judges, and B, violating that confidence in order to file fake upside down and backwards ethics charges against one of the members, using that or violating that agreement and using his statements against him, though the statements are true, well-founded, and arrived at through proper procedure, to turn that into an ethics complaint saying you're undermining the integrity of the judiciary. Well, you're undermining the integrity of the judiciary by blabbing about what goes on at a judicial conference proceeding. And two, you have it backwards. You're the one in contempt. You're the one that ought to be facing ethics charges. Now, oh yeah, I'm rubber and you're glue. I mean, that's all this comes down to. And you can't take the judicial conference all that seriously, or at least its chief administrative officer all that seriously, if he doesn't find that troubling at the least. Even Senator Susan Collins of Maine would find this deeply troubling, even though she would do nothing about it. So, all right, I found that very interesting and a good letter generally, and, well, good to put on the record. What other items should I be catching you up on? Well, how about this one that's going on over, since we're on the Department of Justice for the moment. This one may have escaped your detection, but probably not if you are active on social media. And yet you won't find anybody walking around and talking about this in diners for some reason. But if you have doubts, let's say that raised some doubts for you, that letter. Gosh, the Department of Justice is really backsliding here. They seem to be, when they find themselves taking actions that land them in contempt of court, they are charging the judge that finds them probably to be, and it starts an investigation into whether or not they're in contempt. That's a bridge too far for them. They need to file a formal ethics complaint against that guy. And that's because they come to this with clean hands, of course. So, what else is going on in the department that might call into question whether or not they really should be called the Department of Justice? The double entendre of calling out the so-called Department of Justice ethics complaint. Well, here's something, among others, that you've heard. NPR reporting on their All Things Considered program. The upshot of it is that somebody who's working at the Department of Justice, well, everybody almost at this stage ought not to be, but a video showing a now Department of Justice official present at the Capitol on January 6th. And you might wonder, well, that could be anything, right? Well, the video actually portrays this now Department of Justice official urging January 6th rioters to kill cops. Golly, that seems like something you ought not to be doing if you're up for a job at the Department of Justice. But remember how this happened. He did what he did, showed up on January 6th, launching an insurrection against the United States government, and urges his fellow rioters to kill the cops standing between them and the Capitol so they can go in and arrest/murder Congress. But now, Trump having been elected again, January 6th is a heroic day of liberation, and his urging his fellow rioters to kill cops is, to purge the ranks of bad cops that'll stop us from doing things like murdering Mike Pence, which are super patriotic. And now this guy should be in charge of saying, who else is guilty of the crime of stopping me from murdering people? And let's bring those guys to justice. That's the truth of it. Police body cam footage is what illustrates this piece. Footage was introduced at the trial of Jared Wise, showing him berating police officers on January 6th and yelling, "Kill 'em," as rioters attacked law enforcement. So this is a bit of a turn of events, right? I suppose that's the next stage up. Well, you found evidence that I'm in contempt of court. Well, you're under arrest for saying so. Well, less than 5 years after urging rioters to kill police at the Capitol, a former January 6th defendant is working as a senior advisor for the Department of Justice, which has been, as they say here, gently enough, dramatically remade under the second Trump administration. That's putting it mildly, right? Al Capone, John Dillinger, all Department of Justice employees now. Imagine it that way. NPR has obtained police body cam footage from multiple angles of the former defendant and current administration official, Jared Wise, berating officers and calling them Nazis and Gestapo. NPR located the footage, which has not previously been published, in a review of thousands of court exhibits from January 6th criminal cases, all, of course, dismissed now because they all got clemency or had pardons issued. So, because you need to have a clean record if you're going to work for the Department of Justice, you see. Anyway, all of this obtained through legal action by a coalition of media organizations. The Department of Justice had introduced the footage as an exhibit in Wise's trial. Remember, it's totally different Department of Justice at that point. The Biden Department of Justice said there was this major criminal activity on January 6th. We should prosecute the perpetrators. The Trump people came in and occupied the Department of Justice, threw everybody else from the old Department of Justice out, even if they were career employees, nonpartisan, not political appointees, threw everybody out and said, up is down, black is white. This is the new law. Sacking the Capitol, if you're for Trump, is good and patriotic, and how silly that people should be charged with a crime in all of this. The real crime is Judge Boasberg saying that he was going to follow procedure carefully to find out whether or not we were in contempt. Obviously, we're not in contempt. The new law is we do good, they do bad, and if you prosecute us saying what we did is bad, you're under arrest for doing a bad thing. Got it? So, that's where we now stand. The Department of Justice, the original one, when they actually pursued justice, introduced this same footage as an exhibit in Wise's trial when it was illegal to sack the Capitol, remember? NPR also obtained the transcript of Wise's own testimony in which he acknowledged that he did repeatedly yell, "Kill him," as officers were being attacked, and tried to explain his actions back when he was a defendant. When there was a Department of Justice and he was in trouble for saying, "Let's kill cops," what did he say about it? He's trying to explain himself. I don't know. Maybe they don't quote him here. But now, of course, this is an act of patriotism, and it's silly and, in fact, unpatriotic to charge him with a crime. Wise was not convicted of any crimes related to January 6th, by the way, due to President Trump's order to end all Capitol riot prosecutions. So he never got his day in court. Didn't need it. A Department of Justice spokesperson said in a statement, quote, and remember, I guess this is now the current Department of Justice. What does he say about Jared Wise? Jared Wise is a valued member of the Justice Department now, and we appreciate his contributions to our team. Okay, that's pretty corrupt. The videos depict a tense period in the middle of the riot that day. The Capitol building had been breached 2 hours earlier with doors knocked off hinges and windows smashed. The air was thick with pepper spray. The vice president, along with members of Congress, had been forced to evacuate and halt the certification of the 2020 election as rioters yelled, "Give them the rope! Hang Mike Pence!" and "Traitors get the guillotine!" Oh, what happened to their being, crazy, radical, blah, 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 something. So, oh, no, only the woke people are crazy radicals. That was patriotic. Guillotines. Yeah. Because they wanted it. The Capitol grounds were almost entirely overrun with angry Trump supporters, many of whom had assaulted police with weapons, including a bat, a hockey stick, stun guns, metal bars, and chemical sprays. Law enforcement officers were bruised, bloodied, and in some cases temporarily blinded from the attacks, but still trying to hold the line where they could. At 4:21 p.m., Wise stepped up to a police line on the Upper West Terrace of the building. Wise had already entered the Capitol through a door that was forced open, exiting about 10 minutes later because he really didn't know what the F to do. He caught the car and he wasn't sure what to do, so he exits again through a broken window. What a fun way to go. According to charging documents, he remained on the Capitol grounds for hours during the ongoing chaos. "You guys are disgusting," Wise told the officers. That's a lot worse than saying to defund them, by the way. How outrageous. And he's just one guy, but can't we tar all Republicans with that now? Sure, absolutely. Why not? Somebody made a blog post saying they didn't like the Sydney Sweeney ads, and we're like 6 weeks into discussion over whether or not, we should be canceling one another or who, or does Sydney Sweeney have anything to do with it whatsoever? We don't even know. I don't know. You don't know, but that goes on for weeks. This guy says, "You're disgusting, kill him," and they can't make anything out of it. Well, anyway, you guys are disgusting, Wise told the officers as captured in the body cam footage. I'm former law enforcement, and now once again law enforcement. You're disgusting. You are the Nazi. You are the Gestapo. Wise had served at the FBI from 2004 to 2017, where he worked on international counterterrorism and eventually became a terrorist. I misread that. And eventually became a supervisory special agent. But he actually, by January 6, 2021, according to later testimony, he was working as a consultant in Bend, Oregon, and he traveled to Washington, D.C. to support Trump. As he stood in front of the police line, he continued to berate the officers. Shame on you, he yelled. Shame on you. Shame on you. That's 3 shame on yous. Violence erupted again as rioters pushed against the officers, knocking one to the ground, according to prosecutors. Kill him! Kill him! Wise yelled as he watched the skirmish. Get him! Get him! He seems to repeat himself. Just for emphasis, just in case you think that was a one-off, I said it again. In 2023, prosecutors obtained an indictment against Wise for civil disorder, disorderly conduct on Capitol grounds, as well as aiding and abetting an assault on a law enforcement officer, or on multiple law enforcement officers, it seems. Wise pleaded not guilty because of how honest he is. And at the beginning of January 2025, just before Trump took office, he went on trial. Briefly, I guess, because Greg Rosen then led the Justice Department's Capitol Siege section, which prosecuted the January 6th cases and personally oversaw Wise's prosecution. Rosen told NPR that Wise's history as an FBI agent informed his team's approach. His prior experience as a police officer, as a law enforcement officer, certainly informed his understanding of what was right and wrong and the circumstances that he was presented with that day in the middle of that riot. Somebody who is in a position of authority and somebody who's in a position of trust should know better. This actually makes his crime worse, is what they were saying. But what about if it's made better by making it go away and declaring it a patriotic act? Wise's attorneys argued that his speech was protected by the First Amendment. Kill him, kill him. Kill cops. Sure. And that there's no evidence that anyone involved in the skirmish heard and was encouraged by his words, especially given the cacophony of noise at the time. That's interesting. Wise testified in his own defense on the witness stand. According to the trial transcript, Wise acknowledged entering the Capitol building and tried to explain why he called the police Nazis and Gestapo and said kill them as other rioters assaulted the officers. He testified that he was responding to what he viewed as police brutality and acting out of anger. Oh boy, we have some body cam footage to show you, pal. Those are terrible things to say. Of course I shouldn't say those things. Except now I actually say, yes, I should, because I was right. Because now I'm free and I got pardoned. At the time, though, oh no, those are terrible things. I should never have said them. I think I was careless and used like terrible words when I was angry. And that, by the way, that's a total legal defense, right? I shouldn't have done that. Boy, I probably was angry when I murdered that guy and ate him. Yeah, well, that's contrition. Anyway, he said the terms Nazi and Gestapo came to mind because of law enforcement training he had received from the Anti-Defamation League and past visits to Holocaust museums. You see, I love Israel and Jews. They taught me to say that everybody who stands in my way is Nazi and Gestapos. That's what they taught me to say. They didn't tell me to look at the pictures and see, hey, the things that they were doing are nowhere near what's going on here, but I am being opposed. That guy wouldn't let me go back in the Capitol. I've already been there. Wouldn't let me go back in and smear feces on the wall. That's the same thing as, killing millions of people. I think, right? I guess in a world where this is tourism and it was a day of love, despite what we see on camera, if that can happen in your mind, I guess anything can happen. A federal prosecutor pressed Wise about his rant against police. You yelled, shame on you, Assistant U.S. Attorney Taylor Fonten asked. I did, Wise replied. And you meant it or you wouldn't have said it, right? Fonten asked. I assume yes, Wise said. And you meant kill him, kill him, kill him, get him, right? Fonten asked. No, Wise said. I think that was just an angry reaction. So, Nazis, Gestapo, you meant it. Or you wouldn't have said it, right? Oh, I'm sorry. Shame on you, you meant. Kill him, he didn't. Okay, so you meant it 10 seconds before, and then all of a sudden you didn't mean it, right? Fontaine said, no, Wise says, I don't think I meant kill him. I don't want people to die. Look, Wise did not personally assault police, although he testified that he would have been morally justified if he had tried to stop police from using what he viewed as excessive force on January 6th. That's some major privilege happening for you, right? By the way, just comply and you won't have anything happen, right? Anyway, he described his decision to enter the Capitol as an irrational decision and acknowledged during cross-examination that it was probably obvious he wasn't supposed to go into the building, like by the presence of all the cops and barriers maybe. Both the defense and prosecution had completed closing arguments in the case when Trump took office on January 20th and basically made it all going away, saying it was a grave national injustice. Hi everybody, it's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and patreon.com patreon.com is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's continue on here. I'm already looking ahead to other things that we should probably be bringing to your attention, but we'll have to pick and choose as we navigate through the flood of news. But again, a little more detail, just because it seems so outrageous to have someone working in the Justice Department that on January 20th of this year was a criminal defendant in an insurrection case and now is a Department of Justice official for some strange reason. And the strange reason, of course, is the round of blanket immunities, essentially blanket pardons issued to January 6th rioters on day one as Trump took office, disguising this, what he was calling before, a day of love and just tourism, as one of the Republican members of Congress said after the fact. Not immediately after the fact. Immediately after the fact, oh my gosh, we're all scared to death. A few months later, well, they were just tourists. Tourists with tear gas who were killing police, or being encouraged to anyway. That all a grave national injustice, according to Trump. And then the day after the inauguration, federal judge Randolph D. Moss formally dismissed Wise's case. It's unclear what precise role Wise is now playing at the Department of Justice, and why is that unclear? Why are we not clear on who works for the DOJ and in what capacity? According to email records from multiple sources viewed by NPR, Wise holds the title of senior advisor in the Office of the Deputy Attorney General, is that Todd Blanche, and has been working on internal reviews of alleged, quote, weaponization of law enforcement. What would that be like, I wonder? In its statement, the Justice Department did not respond to NPR's questions about Wise. But, by the way, weaponization of law enforcement might be things like, an insurrectionist who encouraged people to murder police officers being let off the hook and instead made a Department of Justice advisor to the Deputy Attorney General. Or lifting a memo from internal deliberations at the Judicial Conference and turning it into an ethics complaint against the person who wrote the memo, even though the memo is about, hey, I think Department of Justice is in contempt of court here, and we got to talk about how to handle that because it's problematic. Oh, is it? Yeah. Well, instead of actually looking into it and maybe saying, maybe we need to work out our conflict here. I mean, it's going to be difficult to settle, but maybe the DOJ should say, hey, let's put the brakes on this. Let's start talking to the judicial conference about what we can do to turn down the heat between DOJ prosecutors and the federal judges they appear before. Now, why don't we file charges instead, and we'll arrest or otherwise get rid of the judges who are saying these terrible things about us. It was a day of love in court that day. We were in contempt of court. Not contempt, love. We were just tourists. But let's open a investigation into someone's weaponizing this place. We don't know who. They're all fired now, but we're very angry about it. Meanwhile, Trump appointed conservative activist Ed Martin as U.S. pardon attorney and director of the administration's new weaponization working group. Attorney General Pam Bondi tasked the group with reviewing improper investigative tactics and unethical prosecutions related to the Capitol attack. Unethical prosecutions. Kill him. That's unethical to prosecute that guy. Before joining the administration, Martin served on the board of a nonprofit group that financially supported the January 6th defendants and their families. In interviews, he has suggested that violence against police on January 6th may have been justified because the events were staged. A conspiracy theory not backed by credible evidence. I'm not saying if you hit a cop, you get excused. I'm not saying that, Martin said in 2024. Although I am saying the more we find out about how staged and managed this was, the more we have to have less judgment on somebody who hits a cop. Really? You hit a cop, you're going in. I need that clip from Good Will Hunting where Trump's policy on the Unabomber came from. Anyway, I've seen people hit a cop, and that doesn't make it the end of the world, Martin said. Wow. They shoot people for being mouthy with cops. As the cops say they're being mouthy. Do you have your ID? Yes. That's yes, sir, to you. Pull that guy out and kill him. But, other kinds of people tend to get away. Sometimes you just got to hit them. There's a problem with cops. They just don't listen. That's the way it goes. Anyway, they used to knock the hell out of guys like that in the old days. They were treating them very rough for not hitting their cops hard enough. Wasn't that what he was talking about? Anyway, well, look, the Department of Justice could have hired anyone for these jobs, says Rosen, whose name we called out and identified him before. I forget offhand where he's working, but he's one of the normies in all of this. The Department of Justice could have hired anyone. They chose someone who was alleged and credibly alleged to have participated in a riot. It's like on film, encouraging other rioters to kill police officers protecting the Capitol. And he's in charge of investigating someone else has weaponized this place. Holy cow. While the White House has portrayed itself as a firm advocate of law enforcement, the administration's actions have made clear that its notion of back the blue has a January 6th exception. The hypocrisy is astounding, said Rosen. Just hours after his inauguration, Trump granted clemency to all of the more than 1,500 January 6th defendants, including the most violent, the worst of the worst, as they call it when they're talking about it in an immigration situation. Most January 6th defendants received full, complete, and unconditional pardons. Some had prior criminal records or pending charges for rape, manslaughter, domestic violence, drug trafficking, possession of child sexual abuse material, and other crimes. And by the way, several of them are in court currently saying the pardon wasn't just for January 6th. The pardon included my charges for rape, manslaughter, domestic violence, drug trafficking, possession of child sexual abuse material, and other crimes. And you would think, no, that's insane, except for the fact that the Trump administration is once again right in the middle of the process of probably pardoning somebody for child sexual abuse. So, if you think it's difficult to imagine, read a newspaper. 14 defendants, all of whom were linked to the extremist groups, the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys, received commutations, releasing them from prison, though not erasing their felony convictions from their records. All the defendants facing ongoing cases like Wise had their charges dismissed. Active investigations into assaults on police were closed. Former FBI Director Christopher Wray referred to the January 6th attack as an act of domestic terrorism. So yes, there's a former terrorist advising the Deputy Attorney General. And remember, something, Weather Underground, Barack Obama, Jeremiah Wright, yada, yada. Yeah. Every Republican accusation is a confession. All the defendants facing ongoing cases like Wise had their charges dismissed, right? Chris Wray says that they were domestic terrorists, or at least that this was an act of domestic terrorism in which they participated. So, draw your own conclusions. The current FBI director, alleged to be Kash Patel, previously helped produce a song performed by the January 6 rioters in jail, including some who violently assaulted police. 2 former January 6 defendants, one of whom smashed a Capitol window with a tomahawk and was where do you even get one? And was convicted of assaulting police, received a White House tour. The Trump administration paid nearly $5 million to settle a wrongful death suit brought by the family of Ashley Babbitt, a January 6th rioter who was shot and killed by police while trying to breach a barricaded door by the House chamber. There's no less wrongful death, if you ask me. The Department of Justice had previously determined that the shooting was justified, but the new Department of Justice, or at least the people who occupied the offices of the Department of Justice later, said actually upside down and backwards, shooting somebody trying to smash their way into the House of Representatives while it was in session, trying to elect the President of the United States by ratifying the votes of the Electoral College. That's heroism. Shooting her is the real crime. Let's take $5 million of taxpayer money and give it to the person who was about to try to murder members of Congress. That seems weird and backwards to me. The administration fired dozens of career prosecutors who worked on the January 6th cases. Rosen himself was demoted before he decided to leave the government to join the firm Rogers Joseph O'Donnell. I guess they get a free ad out of that. After Martin joined the government, he said that former January 6th defendants like Wise deserve restitution. More money for those guys. If you're damaged, you should be made whole. Oh, he's damaged, all right. Martin said in May, that's what's at stake with weaponization. Holy mackerel. So, yeah, talk about your weaponization. We're now having successfully raided the Congress and threatened to murder everybody there in the middle of one of their most important sessions. They're now we sacked the Capitol. Why not sack the Treasury? No one's going to stop us. Well, not only do you not need to sack the Treasury anymore, you don't need to, because Ed Martin will just Uber you a check. We're just going to, sack Fort Knox. I want the gold. Sack the Treasury. Take all the money. No. Relax at home. Put your feet up. We'll send the money to you at government expense. It's government money, plus we'll also pay postage. So why bother? Why trouble yourself? Have a snack. Holy cow. We're in trouble. Girl, you in danger. Okay. Now I need to bring you up to date on I guess we're in the last segment. Did you guess the stupid, amazingly, incredibly stupid and variously disgusting and out of control nonsense that's happening today? You won't be able to keep up on social media and understand what's going on unless you know that. How do I even begin to broach this subject? I don't have any articles set aside on it, but I do have my Google search that's turned up a couple, and there's like 5 articles came up. I mean, many more, but 5 articles came up on the first screen here, and it seems like they're all covering a different angle of this, and I can't believe we're spending our time with it. But something happened, just like dumber than Sydney Sweeney incident. And I don't want to say dumber than Sydney Sweeney. She's not dumb. Dumber than the incident that's happening around her, but yet slightly more degrading and potentially dangerous. Someone in attendance at WNBA games, basketball games, apparently on more than one occasion, has thrown sex toys onto the court. Like, I guess this is now a thing. You go, and I gather this, I don't know whether, well, we'll read a little bit about what's behind it, but apparently it was some crypto bros, like trying to somehow, they say they were trying to like publicize their coin, I guess, by doing something outrageous that would go viral. But I think that they chose, because they're misogynists, to go to WNBA games. And, you know, people love to circulate rumors that, that the players are all, lesbians, transgender, possibly too. They might throw that in there because they're, participating in sports, and that's strenuous. So they have to be lesbians on top of it all. And, and in some cases it's true, but who cares? And I don't know why you would, I don't know. So they, in their minds, because they're 15-year-olds, or as I saw somebody post on Blue Sky earlier today, a confederacy of Beavises, right? Dan Devine saying that this is, well, putting it this way, or maybe Dan Devine tweeting that he's read it somewhere else. I don't know what, but he has it in quotes here. We're all throwing, this is, I guess, a fake quote. He's trying to like say, this is what they're saying in effect. These guys apparently promoting the meme coin. We're all throwing dildos at women athletes to promote our meme coin. Like, if you were saying that's your defense of what you're doing here, that really puts a fine point on not just how sexist, mean, and stupid so much of the right is now, but also the grim degree to which we're just inundated with stuff a 15-year-old dipshit, would think is cool. A confederacy of Beavises. Well, that'll pretty much wrap it up for you. But the thing is this, when I said you're not going to understand what's going on online unless you hear about this, yes, this is a story. Yes, we'll, I guess, delve into the root of it a little bit, just so you understand a little bit more. Although, God damn it, I can't believe you have to understand what happened here in a different context. Because after having saying, yeah, this is stuff a 15-year-old dipshit would think is cool, we're stuck with a confederacy of Beavises here. Just so you know, Donald Trump Jr. has now posted an image, and he's now putting AI to work. You remember Donald Trump was up on the roof of the White House the other day? Donald Jr. is posting an image because he thinks it's funny, cool, and helpful. An image created through AI of his dad, Donald Trump, the president of the United States, throwing a dildo. According to our good friends at Political Wire, Tegan Goddard has got this, the briefest, all we need is a brief blurb on this. Don Jr. posts image of father throwing a dildo. There we are. Keep in mind, please, a tan suit on the president of the United States, jeans in the Oval Office, outrageous display of disrespect for the presidency. Don Jr. posting an image of his own dad throwing dildos. There you go. Donald Trump Jr. posted a photoshopped image of his father, President Donald Trump, throwing a dildo off the White House roof. Goodbye, everybody. That's the end of it. Let's just play our outro music. We're done here. We're not going to end the show, but the journalism is finished. The end of commentary as well. We've now gotten to the point where I have to read that sentence. Donald Trump Jr. posted a photoshopped image of his father, the president of the United States, throwing a dildo off the White House roof. The Daily Beast reports the meme is in the dry reportage here. The meme is a reference both to the president's recent stroll around the roof of the White House and to a recent incident involving Indiana Fever guard Sophie Cunningham, who got clocked in the head. I don't know where she got hit. I say clocked in the head because it's raining down from above. Maybe she got hit in the ankle. I don't know. But she was hit by one of these thrown objects. Cunningham was struck, again, in the dry reportage. Cunningham was struck by a sex toy that was thrown onto the court during a WNBA game between Indiana Fever and the Los Angeles Sparks on Tuesday. And now we're at the stage where the president's large adult son is posting photos. He's photoshopping a dildo into a picture of his father, who's the president. Tan suit. Just putting that out there. Talk about, oh my God. Anyway, so I said I assumed the danger of Googling sex toys basketball game, figuring that was the most likely way to bring me to a couple of news hits about it without, getting something that would be really inappropriate right up on the screen during the show. And this is what I got. So, by the way, the AI answer is a sex toy was thrown onto the court in the closing seconds of the Atlanta Dreams 86-65 victory over the Chicago Sky on Thursday night, the latest such incident at a WNBA game. So that happened more than once. Sex toys were also thrown on a court during games in Atlanta on July 29th, Chicago on Friday, and Los Angeles on Tuesday. So it's now an epidemic. All right. Top stories. The Guardian has the headline, another WNBA game disrupted by sex toy thrown on court in Chicago. The AP. How does the WNBA deal with sex toy throwers? What to know about arrests and God only knows what else. USA Today's headline, WNBA sex toy controversy explained. Why are they being thrown on court? Blah, 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 blah. And the Guardian, Guardian again, the WNBA's sex toy epidemic is Skibidi brain rot writ large. Trolling has something. And by the way, Skibidi brain rot, do you have kids of the right age to know what the Skibidi thing is about? God only knows. How are we to explain this to the future? I think I used to say quite frequently, right, history will demand to know why we didn't hang Donald Trump. History now is going to begin to demand why we didn't hang ourselves. Why are there still historians? Why is anybody alive at this point? Shouldn't we all be jumping off the roof of the White House? The trolling of WNBA games with sex toys is Skibidi brain rot. It's, by the way, you want to look it up? Skibidi, writ large. It's replaced meaning with noise, says Lee Escobedo. And I'm just not sure where to turn first in all of this. And I mean, I think we're not ready for Skibidi yet. But what was the USA Today question? Why sex? What they're going to explain it to us. Why are they being thrown on court at games? All right, Mark Giannotto, please tell us, and God, make it quick. Maybe we want to just read the key points. AI-assisted summary. Do we even know whether they really read this article? Sex toys have been thrown onto the court during multiple WNBA games, leading to arrests and investigations. Good, fine, terrific. If you throw a tomato onto the court, you should be arrested and investigated. While some incidents appear to be pranks, concerns about misogyny and targeted harassment of players are rising. Players and coaches have expressed anger and frustration, calling the incidents disrespectful and immature. Those aren't really good key points. Maybe they don't know why. They just put why in the headline to see if they could make me click. Why are they being thrown onto the court? Nobody knows when the next sex toy might come flying onto the court. Nobody does know. True. This is the lingering problem with the whodunit the WNBA never wanted to have to solve, but must for the sake of the players. It's a NSFW, not safe for work, case with plenty of fallout for a league that is already dealing with CBA negotiations and possible shutdown alongside its growing popularity. What initially inspired mostly jokes and laughter has turned into claims of misogyny, conspiracy theories, multiple law enforcement investigations, and of course, sex toys being thrown onto or toward the court at as many as 5 WNBA games over the past 10 days. There's intrigue and confusion about the motives and what's actually happening here. The unfortunate trend is generating a wide range of reaction from players and fans alike. Though there have been 2 arrests made in the matter. It's still unclear whether it's simply a viral prank popularized by social media or a more coordinated effort meant to target WNBA and its players. Here's a breakdown of what to know. I have a feeling we're going to be left wanting here. About the WNBA's escalating sex toy problem, including having some potential answers to help sift through this mystery the league and its players want to end. Oh my God. Now there's a little graphic here. Dig deeper. The WNBA, a crypto meme coin, and sex toys being thrown at games. Let's see. WNBA sex toy incident sparked by a crypto meme coin group More pranks are planned. It says, immature crypto bros can't understand throwing sex toys at WNBA players isn't harmless fun. WNBA sex toy controversy explained. Why are they being thrown on court? So when are we going to get to the answer here? The AI generating dumb stuff here. Why? Cryptocurrency meme coin creators said they're responsible for the sex toys being thrown at multiple WNBA games, and they're planning more such pranks. A group of crypto enthusiasts and traders launched, here we are, Green Dildo Coin. That's what we got. And of course, it's listed on the exchanges as dildo, and that's your choice. It's a meme coin intended to be lighthearted and perceived as a joke. And in late July, to protest, they launched it, what they described as a toxic environment in the crypto world, according to the group's spokesman who spoke exclusively to USA Today Sports. Yay. Many smaller players in the space, that is to say, not the basketball space, but the coin space, are struggling to keep up with the influx of influencers and scammers. We didn't do this because we dislike women's sports or like some of the narratives that are trending right now are more ridiculous, he said. Creating disruptions at games is like, hey, it happens in every single sport, right? We've seen it at the NFL. We've seen it at hockey. Fans doing random things to more or less create attention. That's gross. There have been 2 arrests made, but the crypto spokesman said those people were not associated with the group. Isn't that something? Delbert Carver, 23, was arrested after throwing an object at a July 29th WNBA game in Atlanta and charged with disorderly conduct, public indecency, indecent exposure, interestingly enough, and criminal trespass. Carver told police this was supposed to be a joke, and the joke was supposed to go viral, according to the arrest affidavit. Well, that probably won't help you, but go on. Caden Lopez, an 18-year-old, arrested this week after throwing a sex toy that hit a man watching the game with his 9-year-old niece, and the crowd at the Phoenix Mercury game on August 5th had a similar explanation. It's not an explanation. He called it a stupid prank that's trending on social media. He bought the sex toy the day before to take it to the game. So, planned. I mean, of course it's planned. Unless you want to tell me that men are accidentally forgetting that they have dildos in their pockets when they go to basketball games. And I don't think so. Enough for the explanation. By the way, if you wanted to get it even dumber, I could read you. I'll read you the thing about I want to bring it back to the Skibidi toilet. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm saying this. I actually know what that is about. Oh, they didn't mention toilet, but they'll get around to explaining it, I guess. The trolling of WNBA games with sex toys is Skibidi brain rot writ large. Lee Escobedo, right? What's going on here? Quick read. The first dildo dropped from the sky like a glitch in the Matrix. We should not be glamorizing what's going on here, or even, okay. For anyone tuned in to the July 29th game between the Atlanta Dream and the Golden State Valkyries, the initial reaction was disbelief. A world where feeds are increasingly AI generated and algorithmically tuned for confusion, the boundaries between real and unreal have softened into clay. Our senses, once reliable, now compete with simulation. What does it mean when dildos become airborne at WNBA games? Not once, not twice, but repeatedly. Protest? Performance art? Or just another malformed blip in the automated dreamscape we scroll through daily? Well, that's an interesting question. Next interesting question is, where's the rest of the article? There we are. 2 men have been arrested. We know about that. One 18, the other 23. Part of Gen Z, although arguably 18, perhaps early alpha. Anyway, the prime consumer of debased meme culture. Authorities, by the way, they would say based, and we use the proper word, debased. Isn't that interesting? I don't think that's what they meant by it, but maybe it is. I don't know. Authorities have not identified suspects in the 2 most recent incidents. However, anyway, the 2 idiots saying, well, it was supposed to be a joke to go viral. That's not going to help you. When it happened more than once, the meaning shifts. It reveals the collapse of coherence under TikTok's attention economy. Those aren't protests or insults that make a point. They're spectacles. The goal is to provoke. In a mimetic landscape poisoned by irony, absurdity is the point. The dildo isn't symbolic. Its function is noise. when it's not being used properly, I guess. Philosopher Guy Debord. Are we even quoting philosophers in all of this? I can't even tell you how upsetting that is. But I guess it's trying to make sense for people who take pride in still being able to think about things and who may have read a book. What do we make of this? But there's just no way to do it. Let me skip down just for a little bit, just to make mention of this. So far, the suspects in these cases are part of Gen Z, a generation raised in and by the internet. Their actions cannot be dismissed as isolated provocations. They must be contextualized. Are you ready to try to contextualize them? They must be contextualized within TikTok's cultural logic, or worse, the absurdist ethos of Skibidi toilet. If you are a normally functioning adult with a job, you might ask, what is Skibidi toilet? But actually, if you're a functioning adult with a job, you just say, F it, I don't want to know. Skibidi toilet. It's a thing. A viral animated web series featuring surreal, low-resolution battles between human heads protruding from toilets and humanoid characters with surveillance equipment for heads. Glitchy visuals, overstimulating pacing, and meme loops create a vibe without meaning. It's a thing that's happening in America. The kids are watching it, and as much as we want to shake our fists and say, darn kids, I have news for you. The president's large adult son is photoshopping dildos into his father's hands for unknown reasons, and quite honestly, if you or I had done that, for whatever reason, and who cares what the reason might be, Donald Trump Jr. would have taken it. This is outrageous. It's treason against the United States of America. If I do it, well, what can I tell you? It's just good old-fashioned clean fun, except for the fact that it got involved dildos, and I don't know what to tell you. This is how I'm leaving you for the weekend. I imagine things will all get better over the weekend, and we'll be on solid footing on Monday when we're back with Greg and Toe.
From networksradio.com, you have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Well, look, Justice Putnam will take you back into serious territory next on the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, beginning with a furious Canada throwing punches that are landing hard against the weak and incompetent Trump administration. Elsewhere, the Stanford University student newspaper is the one taking on the job of suing the Trump administration for violating the First and Fifth Amendment rights. We'll see you next week.